Fighting in northern Mozambique displaces thousands of people. The government's calling for international help to defeat fighters linked to ISIL. So, could the violence spread to Mozambique's neighbours? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Imran Khan. Fighting in northern Mozambique is worsening a humanitarian crisis. The military is struggling to hold back ISIL-linked groups in the Cabo Delgado region. Violence has intensified in recent months. Fighters have been accused of indiscriminate killings and burning villages. Mozambique's government has asked for help from neighbours South Africa and Tanzania, as well as the European Union. The UN says at least 400,000 people have been displaced. Many are living in camps with little food and water.
We are not animals. Animals sleep in the sand. They make a hole and sleep. We have spent 3 to 4 months sleeping on the floor, on the cement. We are getting sick.
There is a lot of hunger here in 3 camps. We are hungry. Tell people that the communities of Mapasana and Mapane are hungry. Don't be surprised if you see people dying of hunger. A bag of 50 kilograms of food for 30 days is nothing.
So clearly access to food, water, clean water is key, access to shelter, access to household items. These are really sectors and the support that is regularly requested by internally displaced persons.
The attacks in northern Mozambique started in 2017. More than 2,200 people have since been killed. Dozens were beheaded. Fighters have stepped up their violence in recent months and seized a major port near a $60 billion gas project. One of the main groups active in the area is Al-Sunnah wa Jamaa, also known as Al-Shabaab, with no relation to the group in Somalia. Mozambique's army is supported by private military groups from Russia and South Africa. Analysts fear the security crisis could spill into neighbouring countries. Let's bring in our guests, all joining us from Mozambique. In the capital, Maputo, we have journalist Fernando Lima. Angele Dikongue-Atangana is the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees Deputy Director for Southern Africa. She joins us from Pemba. And also in Maputo is Adriano Nuvunga, Director at the Centre for Democracy and Development. Welcome to you all. I'd like to begin in Pemba first with Angele Dikongue-Atangana. The United Nations is already in crisis. It's having a crisis all over the world. There's a funding crisis. You're just not going to get the money that you need to be able to deal with any escalation here, are you?
Thank you very much for that question. We indeed are in a situation where we have multiple crises in the world. And the one in the northern part of Mozambique is not the least among the crises we have to face. And indeed, as you may know, until the beginning of the ongoing crisis, especially the beginning of this year, Mozambique for UNHCR was really a situation of care and maintenance for the more than close to 30,000 refugees and asylum seekers that we had in the country, with a camp which is hosting some 9,500 of them in Maratane in Nampula province. But with the internal displacement crisis that have shot up, we really have had to reconsider our presence. And in that regard, from the beginning of this year, when we only had 2 staff members in the northern part of the country, in Cabo Delgado, specifically Pemba, we are now ramping up to a situation whereby from the 1st of January 2021, we will have some 26 staff members positioned in Cabo Delgado, Pemba, to cater for the some 424,000 IDPs, as we have agreed to that number in the humanitarian country team. And this really is calling for a great attention, as you have heard it. This is a huge protection crisis with so many protection issues around, which our organization is really busy, we have established a protection cluster within the interagency framework, and we are the lead of that protection cluster. And when I talk of protection, it is really, it goes from things like ensuring that these people who have fled harmful situations continue to enjoy.
But Angela, you're about to face a bigger crisis. If the Mozambique government get their way and international community responds and helps in the fight against ISIL in Cabo Delgado, and it is a fight like the one in Iraq against ISIL, you're going to have more refugees on your hands than you can currently ever hope to cope with. So where's the... I mean, you're putting all these people in place, but they're to deal with the current refugee crisis, not the one that's going to come if there is a significant escalation in the war against ISIL.
I guess you want me to speak about the means that we are accessing in ramping up. I would want to tell you that we have just launched a mini appeal to the tune of $19.2 million. And in that regard, we are happy to say that the United States have really come to our rescue with a contribution of $7.4 million to help ramp up our capacity in northern part of Mozambique. We are happy to also report that other institutions, including the EU, Japan as a country, and others are really demonstrating goodwill support into our ramping up efforts. And therefore, we are confident that come 2021, we will have adequate means to cater for the protection needs of the population that is displaced in northern Mozambique. And
let's bring in Adriano Nuvunga here. Adriano, you're the director, for democracy and development. The situation in Cabo Delgado is both a failure of democracy and development, isn't it? Why is this situation coming to a head now?
Well, indeed, there is an important, or there is a great deal of failure of governance here in a manifold way. To start with, the early warning signs that something terrible was cooking in Cabo Delgado, they were neglected. And that's a failure of governance on the one hand. On the other hand is the grievances that have led or that have catalyzed for this conflict to erupt. They result of failure of governance and democracy, particularly in the issue of people benefiting not only of the democracy, but also, and importantly, benefit from the resources, not only gas development, but also mineral and other important projects that are elite-led and are benefiting the elite. So neglect is one of the key grievances, and that speaks clearly to failure of governance and democracy. With this said, there is also an issue of how the state capacity is being utilized to meaningfully respond to the crisis there. And here, we definitely see also failure of governance, not only in terms of the institutional link between the army and police, but also how government is steering stakeholders, including regional forces, to intervene in a coordinated and meaningful manner.
Fernando Lima, how were all of these perhaps disparate groups, Sunna wal Jamal, we're talking about groups linked to ISIL, how were they able to come together? Is it, as our guest in Maputo also says, neglect, or is it something a bit more deeper than that?
Well, I think in line what Adriano have said previously, I think the government, in fact, didn't take very seriously this threat. Finally, they are talking about this international conspiracy, I would say, related to Islamic State as a big threat, not only in Cabo Delgado, but eventually to other areas of the country. But basically, I think the reason why the situation is like that from a humanitarian point of view and also from the military point of view is related to the fact that in 3 years, the whole situation of violence and attacks against civilian targets have not been taken seriously. And that's why now you have appeals on the humanitarian front and also on military grounds to have further support to fight the war in this specific case in Cabo Delgado.
But Fernando, there is a ace card that the Mozambique government have, and that's this $60 billion gas project. They're going to want to protect that. The international community is going to want to protect that. Are they using that to try and get this international community to come in and help militarily?
I think this is the idea, but not only that. I think previously or in order to address that particular issue and talking about figures here, it also needs the government needs to have clarity to what they expect in terms of international community support, and if in terms of humanitarian aid, this is much more easy to handle the situation. On the military side, on the security side, is much more difficult because, for example, within the military apparatus, it's always there's always this very strong sense of if you have an international support, you will lose part of your sovereignty. And this is not an easygoing matter. So you need to overcome all these different hurdles, difficulties, even, I would say, theoretical issues among government and especially within security apparatus in order to have the international community to help Mozambique.
Adriano, we heard Fernando talk about this $60 billion gas project being one of the things that might get the international community involved. But if that happens, Mozambique may lose some of its sovereignty. Do you have any sympathy with that argument?
Well, as I've said in my earlier intervention, no doubt that where Mozambique sits today, it is part of resource scarce. So it's a resource scarce even before production started. And the way that the response, although government has moved, and this needs to be commended, government has moved from a purely militaristic intervention to a more socio-economic intervention. But not much has happened in the ground. So although there is institutional setup, nothing has happened in the ground. This is one. Two, when it comes to the relationship of the government with the international community in the area, this is too problematic in a manifold ways. In terms of security, we clearly see a move towards an hierarchization of security in the area. We see international oil companies building huge walls to protect their premises, and this is wrong. This is not the right approach to go into the nexus between business and security and also human rights in that area. In our view, this is going to further escalate the animosity of communities vis-a-vis these international players in the ground, and government is not making the right move, because government seems to be preferring to protect, to use its state capacity to protect international oil companies' premises, rather than building in the ground and a framework where intervention can help to build the state capacity in order to tackle the key root causes that have led to the situation. So the government itself, although is reluctant to have international troops, international boots in the ground, but the way things are moving, we will see that in the near future, because there is escalation, government is unable, and it is not placing, it's not setting things right in terms of steering the different players in the ground.
Well, let's talk about Mozambique's neighbours. Angela, in South Africa, there is a burgeoning movement of people who are simply xenophobic to Mozambique refugees, and they want them out of the country. Now, South Africa has absorbed a fair amount of refugees. If those people come back to Mozambique, to a very dangerous situation in Cabo Delgado, again, you have yet another problem on your hands, don't you?
Well, if I should be allowed to talk to speak to the issues around the crisis in Cabo Delgado, I should want to say first that, to the best of our knowledge, there has been no meaningful outflow from the current crisis evolving in Cabo Delgado. Mostly people have remained internally displaced. From what we are aware of, there has been about 1,000 persons who have gone to southern Tanzania, in the area of Twara. And these people, unfortunately, have been somewhat pushed back to Mozambique. We are aware that some of about 833 persons have been pushed back to northern Mozambique. And these people, as I'm speaking to you, my colleagues are actually in the process of speaking to those persons to understand what really happened to them from the moment they fled from Mozambique and the moment when they were brought back to the place which they fled in the first place. We have been monitoring the situation and thinking precisely that if it were to be confirmed, this would be tantamount to refoulement, which, as you know, is the cornerstone of the refugee regime, whereby it is forbidden for every single stakeholder to push back or to send back persons to a place where their life would be endangered. And this is what may have happened. In regard to South Africa per se, as a country, we are not aware at UNHCR of new flight of Mozambicans towards South Africa. And you may wish to know that actually that is where the regional office of UNHCR is based. And so if it were to be the case, we would not only ensure that the country office that is there covering other countries as well, and ourselves would really interact with the government and authorities of South Africa to see that those of Mozambique who have fled the crises that are ongoing would be finding international protection if they would show up into South Africa. And maybe to also conclude, I really would like to say that in regard to the international community, I heard other speakers about the inability of the government of Mozambique to face the situation. I would just want to draw a parallel with the situation that had been ongoing in the Lake Chad Basin, stemming from Nigeria as a country. But today we know that this is a situation which has engulfed the overall Lake Chad basin, the 4 countries, i.e. Nigeria itself, Niger, Cameroon, and Chad. All these 4 countries are today completely sinking into the terrorist situation that has been ongoing there ever since 2009 and till date. And my warning, our warning in UNHCR is really that if the international community and specifically the SADC country do not feel that this situation which is evolving in northern Mozambique is of concern to them, then they may find themselves.
Well, Angela, let's put that point to our other guests. Let's put this point to our other guests. Angela is saying there that if you don't deal with this situation, both in a socio-economic development way, in a military way, and handle the refugee crisis, Mozambique could sink into a state which doesn't have any laws and could sink other states as well. Fernando Lima, what do you think? Do you agree?
Well, I think theoretically this is a possibility. That's why you need to tackle the situation now. Despite one could agree that we should have addressed this issue, for example, in 2017. Still, 3 years later, we are still handling a situation that is not controlled. Still, I think there is a possibility that you can have the security issues to be dealt with the support of an international community, because it's quite clear at this point that the Mozambican government by itself, it's not able to address this issue, and on the same ground to deal with a humanitarian crisis, because few months ago,
sorry, Fernando, we are running out of time, and I would like to come to our other guests. Adriano Nuvunga, is there a potential for the Islamic State to declare a state within Mozambique, within Cabo Delgado, that could destabilize not only that region, but other regions around it?
Well, the district of Mosimbwa and parts of Kisanga, they have fallen to the hands of these insurgents since August this year. And government has been incapable of repealing that. This is problematic from the theoretical point of view when government is unable to claim control of some of its territory. With this said, it seems that government has succeeded in preventing occupation of other parts, such as Muidumbe. So I think there is still, we're running a little late, but there is still time and opportunity for government to get things right, as Lima has said, to get the proper international support of the international community. Because without the support of the international community, that is going to be problematic for Mozambique on its own to repeal the ever-growing insurgency in terms of capacity and coordination in the Cabo Delgado area.
I want to thank all our guests, Fernando Lima, Angele Dikongue-Atangana and Adriano Nuvunga, and I want to thank you too for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can also join the conversation on Twitter. We are at AJ Inside Story. From me, Imran Khan, and the whole team here in Doha. Bye for now.